Hello, beloved Shirtloads listeners. Dr. Karl here. Welcome to some excellent repeat episodes. You see, I'm on sabbatical overseas, and I'm working on a strategy using artificial intelligence to counter climate change disinformation. Ooh, big topic. So stay tuned for updates about this exciting new project. I'll be back with new episodes in late April. Catch you then.
G'day, Dr. Karl, Shirtloads of Science, and here we are with another Nick Fuller podcast on his latest book, Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids, 6 Steps to Total Family Wellness. Welcome, Dr. Nick.
G'day, Dr. Karl. Lovely to see you and talk to you again.
You've got 2 children, so I'm guessing that's influencing how to deal with these people, these things that will become fully cooked humans one day?
Yes, it's not easy raising children. It's also part of my work at the University of Sydney in RPT Hospital, where we run Australia's largest weight management service, treating adults but also kids, so that we can set up the next generation and hopefully not have this lifelong struggle with weight and health that many of us as adults are going through, particularly when you look at the stats where 2 in 3 are struggling with their waistline. They're out there trying to do something about it. They struggle to regain control of weight, and we do have this opportunity to get it right for the next generation, and we know that it starts with healthy habits in the family household. And it's not just diet we're talking about, but it's also exercise and sleep health, the key pillars to what is a healthy lifestyle or a healthy, happy household.
So before we dive into it and your 6 steps, I do like the idea of having habits. So when I was a taxi driver, I realised that I was doing 12, 13-hour shifts and I was getting tired. So I just conditioned myself into the habit of always having 2 hands on the steering wheel, always using a blinker before I changed lanes to indicate that I was going to do it. Even if I knew that I was on a 6-lane highway with nobody around at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd still do it. And that habit has helped me a lot. So the idea of having habits and conditioning yourself into certain pathways is good, so you don't make the intellectual decision of, there's nobody around, I won't blink, I'll just change lanes.
Yeah, and look, habits are hard to change, particularly if they've been ingrained in your life or lifestyle for a long period of time. So if you've got older children, undoing some of those unhealthy habits, it doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. If you've got younger children, it's easier because they're more malleable. Their brain is growing and developing quite rapidly, and we're particularly talking about that time from birth to 5 years of age.
And how old are your kids?
So I've got young children. One is now nearly 4. The other one's coming on to 2.
So look, you got 6 steps, health, not weight. I'll just give an overview. Number 2, reach for nature first, talking about food. Then full rainbow, mealtime feeling fine, the social importance of mealtime, that's number 4. 5, play every day. And 6, screen time. So let's just dive into number 1. Health, not weight. So
yes.
Take us through that.
So remember, what we're doing here is actually implementing healthy habits in the family household so that we can overcome a lot of this struggle that parents have in the modern day environment, particularly mealtime. It's a real struggle at the end of the day. It's a battle. We dread that time of the day because the tantrums, kids pushing back on the food or delicious food that we spent time making. We're also struggling with food fussiness. Again, we've put all this energy into food and getting them to eat nutritious food, but they're saying no to it. So we want to equip you with these healthy habits and, importantly, get you not to focus on weight, because children, adolescents, regardless of the age, what we want to be doing is focusing on healthy habits, because then over time they will find their natural optimum set weight, then won't have that lifelong struggle with weight and health that we talked about, which many of us as adults are having. So it's important in this case to be fixating on health, not weight, not putting a diet or restricting their food intake. They're extremely good at regulating their appetite day to day and monitoring their calorie intake and how many calories they should consume throughout the given day.
With health, not weight, you talk about pregnancy and tracking the child's growth.
Many of us will be familiar with checkups that we go through with our child after birth. This is where we're going to the family health nurse or our GP. We're monitoring things like our weight, our height, head circumference to ensure they're growing and developing adequately. Now, this is where that weight conversation is particularly important, because you may go for a checkup. A GP or a nurse may then say your child's weight is actually below or above the normal healthy weight range. And I put healthy in inverted commas because it's important here to be monitoring the trend in your child's weight over time. So if at one point you go for one of these checkups and they're considered or classified as overweight or in the obesity range, the 85th or 95th percentile, it is important not to react and then start restricting their food intake. It is important not to panic because remember, again, they're very good at regulating their appetite. Kids will grow and develop at all different rates. Kids, children, adolescents have different body shapes. Now, particularly in this early stage of life where they're growing, developing quite rapidly, you might find a child is tracking along that 85th percentile in the overweight range, but then as soon as they start to crawl and walk, weight plateaus off, and then they may even fall into that normal, healthy weight range. So the messaging there is that we don't put children on diets. We do not restrict their food intake because what you will do is disrupt their appetite regulation system over time, and you'll set them up for a lifelong misery with weight. Okay, so this is why it's important to focus on health. Allow them to tell you when and where they're hungry. And this is why some children will eat enormous amounts of food at some meal and eat like a sparrow at the next. This is just them regulating their calorie intake across the course of the day. So if you do have a weight that's tracking outside of the normal range, don't panic, don't put them on a food restriction diet. Over time, if you are providing your family with these principles of a healthy lifestyle, they will find their natural optimum set point, and not everyone will fall on a perfect or healthy continuum according to a weight for age graph.
You talk about the first 2,000 days or 6 years of a child's life being so important for long-term health. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, look, this is a time when we're growing and developing rapidly, particularly when we're referring or looking at the brain. We do have this opportunity to shape their lifelong preferences in terms of food and activity and sleep. By offering them the right foods and the right exercise and sleep health environment, it becomes ingrained in their lifestyle. And then you don't have to worry about undoing these unhealthy behaviours that may have been set in stone from, a lifetime of poorer food choices. So what we're talking about is conception to 5 years. We're saying that it's a crucial window. You can, if you focus on that time, it's going to make it a lot easier. But again, the research does show if you've got children of older age, it's still positive. You can reverse the unhealthy behaviours, but it just doesn't happen overnight, and you're going to get a lot more pushback after a lifetime of fast food, processed foods that are coming into the house all the time.
You mentioned that in your second section, Reach for Nature First, eating fruits and vegetables and nuts and whole foods as snacks rather than chips and processed foods, and also the fact that for the majority of that time we haven't had ready access to food. That really only happened maybe in the last 10,000 years with agriculture, and so we are biologically wired. Go for food when it's there. High fat, high sugar, go for it right now. There's a problem there for teenagers because wherever they turn, there's fast food takeaway. And it's high in salt and it's high in fat and it's fried and it's delicious.
Yeah, this is a really good point you make. If you do wind back the clock tens of thousands of years, our ancestors used to seek out foods that are naturally high in sugar, naturally high in fat. They gave us best bang for buck.
Sure.
And, our bodies would hold on to those calories during times of deprivation because they weren't available all the time.
But now they're just everywhere. Like in our modern society in a city, I think that in a city of a few million people, everybody would be within 5 minutes of being able to walk out of the door and get some food.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Ignoring your fridge.
The other important point of that evolutionary discussion is that we learnt to leave plant foods in the environment because they were potentially toxic and harmful to our health.
You need not eat them.
Not eat them. And now if you look at the modern day environment and you think about your own children that are pushing back on those vegetables that you're serving them, this is the very reason why. These bitter tasting vegetables we evolved to leave in the environment. Now you fast forward to the modern day environment, we continue to say no to these vegetables. Our children are saying they're yuck, they push back on the delicious meal that you've presented them, and that is because there's an evolutionary reason why. So we have to start reshaping and rethinking the way we present food to our children, because they are always going to push back on these bitter tasting foods, and they're more likely to seek out foods that are naturally high in sugar. Even with the vegetables, there are sweeter vegetables that they're more likely to go for, particularly when you roast them and bring out that natural sweetness. And remember, this is one of the biggest struggle parents have. It's overcoming food fussiness, getting them to move away from a diet that's largely white or beige foods that they feel comfortable around. As you mentioned before, to focus on nature's treats. So this is all about reaching for nature first.
Right. But I'm not entirely sure that we've always left plants in the ground. We haven't eaten plants.
Bitter tasting foods.
Okay, not bitter tasting, but just plants, because some plants are bitter and some are not.
So bitter tasting.
George Bush, the president, the elder, famously said, I'm not going to eat broccoli because I don't have to. And then there was a whole pushback by the agricultural industry. And then there's a whole nutritional thing that showed that your taste buds change with time, that as a child, it is an advantage for you to keep away from the bitter foods because bitter is associated with poisons. But in an older age, once you've had your children, there's an advantage to go for them because chemicals such as cinegrin, which is bitter in the broccoli, have anti-cancer properties. So your tastes change with time.
Absolutely. And this is why we need to keep offering those foods to them, because not only are they more likely to leave them on the plate, but if you continue to offer these nutritious foods over time, we know that they will slowly adopt them and then begin to like them, because our taste preferences do change and evolve over time. But as a young child, we are more likely to leave them. The cruciferous vegetables, the bitter tasting, the broccoli are going to be left on the plate, particularly if you serve it up as a meat and 3 veg type arrangement. So it's about, I guess, focusing on nature's treats and also cooking food in a way that brings out its natural sweetness, because our children are more likely to go for those foods and enjoy those foods and eat that meal you present them.
Sure, because cooking is important. So an apple you can eat raw and you can get nutrition. A potato you can, but you won't get the nutrition until you cook it. So cooking is an important thing that we've learned along the way in the last 200,000 years.
And this is also about, tying into Reach for Nature First and also the full rainbow, presenting and offering a wide variety of foods, because again, they're not going to take or accept the food necessarily on the first offering. It might take, research shows it takes up to 7 different attempts to get them to enjoy that meal or to try that meal. So it might mean a lot of carrot sticks on the floor or broccoli heads, but over time they will start to try those foods, particularly if you're cooking your family favourites and you're bringing out those natural sweetness from the vegetables. So for example, a pie that's got your meat and your vegetables, when you're cooking and roasting those vegetables, mixing all of those flavours together, it's something that your children's more likely to try and enjoy, as opposed to a plate of food that's just got the meat and the vegetables on the side. What we're trying to do is equip parents with these practical tips, so you're more likely to get success, you're more likely to get your kids eating a wider variety of food, and importantly, looking forward to mealtime, because it is that real battle at the end of the day. You go and spend time cooking that meal, then you give in to their demands of their favourite foods, and they end up getting quite a low nutrition, low fibre diet. And over time, what we are doing is then shaping their lifelong choices towards a processed fast food diet. So coming back to that point you made, processed and fast food is available on every corner of every block. It's very easily to access, releases feel-good chemicals in the brain like serotonin. It also releases that learning chemical called dopamine. So next time you walk past the bakery or your child walks past the bakery, dopamine is released, the learning chemical telling you to go back for more of that food as soon as you smell and taste it. What we're wiring the next generation to do is reach for processed and fast food when they're looking for that high. Remember, our ancestors were always looking for that high, but they got it from nature's treats, the berries, the nuts and the seeds, the honey, the papaya. So that's what we need to keep offering in the family environment. Whenever they're screaming out for that processed and fast food, we need to ensure our family environment has nature's treats on hand at all time, so that we can wire their brain to those foods. And remember, if you've got young kids, it's particularly easy. If it's older kids, it takes time.
It was really surprising that you say on page 49 that if you buy commercial bread, they have to legally chuck in some folate, which is good for pregnant mothers, and iodized salt, but not if they're making small quantities of organic bread. They don't have to have the good stuff in it. I didn't know that.
I guess the other important thing, what I wanted to clear up with Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids, is a lot of the misconceptions around food. I mean, one minute we're talking about carbs being bad for our waistline, bad for our health. The next it's dairy. It used to be fat, but we fear the F word fat due to the effects that it have on our waistline and our heart health. Now, a lot of this is nonsense. It's very hard to know what to believe in the modern day environment when technology is at our fingertips and we have access to so much information. So it's simplifying all of that information around food so that it hopefully becomes the only thing you need to read about food when it comes to your kids' health. Because the full rainbow is about offering all of the foods.
So offering all of the foods, including commercial bread, which legally has to have folate. Were you surprised when you found out that organic breads did not legally have to have it?
Well, look, there's many things that I'm surprised about, I guess, with the food industry. What I'm saying there is commercial breads do have a role to play. You've got to find a healthier option when we're selecting commercial products, and we want to steer our children towards whole grain carbohydrates. These are the ones that are higher in fibre, full in vitamins and minerals, and going to help not only your waistline, but prevent metabolic disease like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease.
So you talk about there being no bad fruits and vegetables, and bananas and potatoes are good, and they do not raise your blood sugar level or worsen your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. In fact, potatoes have got more potassium than bananas, and yet bananas are the ones that got that reputation. So that was an interesting thing. And you mentioned that honeys and berries have kind of been blacklisted by sugar-free diet companies. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. I guess
you made it in your book, Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids, No Colon, 6 Steps to Total Family Wellness.
An interesting thing that got your attention, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. A lot of us as parents have been made to believe that sugar is bad for us. Now, yes, we need to stay clear of the processed sugar, the foods that have the added sugars, the ones that are largely processed, or the fast foods we're talking about, the ones on every corner of every block or at the local corner store. But we need to be providing them the nature's treats, the ones that have the naturally occurring sugars, the ones like the fruits, the ones like the honey, another great nature's treat.
Kind of put on a bad list.
They have. They've been blacklisted because apparently sugar is bad for our health, all sugar that is, and we should be avoiding it altogether.
A little bit for fun and bring a bit of magic at a party every now and then, moderate amounts.
Yeah, and look, fruit is a nutrition-packed food. It's so high in fibre and vitamins and minerals. And remember, when we're talking from an evolutionary point of view, what are your children more likely to go for? The fruit, as opposed to the bitter-tasting vegetables. So if your child wants to eat piece of fruit after piece of fruit and 6 mandarins, that's perfectly fine. You do not need to limit these naturally occurring sugars that are found in very nutritious foods. That's where we're clearing up those misconceptions and saying, hey, fruits are actually great. You don't need to limit the consumption of these nature's treats. And these are the ones that you want to steer your child towards, because if they're having or filling up on the fruits, the nuts and the seeds, they're less likely to scream out for the processed and packaged food or go to the vending machine and get that high they're looking for.
You mentioned marketing scams such as coconut oil and alkaline water and goji berries and almond milk. I'm astonished by almond milk because I did a story about the compositions of the various MYLKs. And on one hand, almonds, they do use up a lot of water to make them, but they are just so loaded with nutrients. And yet almond milk seems to be really close to distilled water. They seem to have managed to get a liquid out of almonds and leave behind all the nutrients. It's astonishing.
It is. It's another food myth that's important to clear up. As a parent, you need to be offering your child, nutritious food sources. Cow's milk should be the first food that is offered. If there is an allergy or a lactose intolerance, you could be moving towards lactose-free cow's milk. If there is a dairy or cow's milk allergy, you can then be moving to the next best alternative, being soy milk.
Yeah, soy's got lots of nutrients. When you look on the side of the packet and you compare that to cow's milk, soy milk is a pretty darn good alternative, especially you mentioned that if it's calcium enriched.
That's right. It stacks up then the same in terms of protein and calcium, which are the main nutrients we're getting from dairy. So this is why it is important to clear up the misconception and say, as a parent, do not offer your child milk alternatives like almond milk, which are very low in nutrition.
Yeah, look on the side of the packet, just compare them. So with regard to milk, I think the situation is we had a mutation happened about 6,500 years ago in Hungary, and then a couple in the Middle East and in Egypt. And the situation today is that 1/3 of people can break lactose down into its two smaller sugars, but 2/3 cannot. And so all of us can have a little glass of milk, but only 1/3 can have a whole milkshake without getting what is politely called the squirts. The majority of the world's population are lactose intolerant.
They are, but this is why we can then be offering our children lactose-free cow's milk.
Yeah.
As the next best alternative.
Yeah, but then I did a story about the A2 milk, and man, it is such a con. This is in my book, Dr. Karl's Random Road Trip Through Science. In milk, you've got about 85% water, and then the remaining 15-12% is fat, protein, carbohydrate. And then you look at the proteins, and the proteins are just a string of amino acids stuck together, and the amino acids have got carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms with a bit of nitrogen. So you start off with, in a litre of milk, you got 32 grams of protein. You have to go through 7 steps to find yourself at A2. So the second step, casein is 1/3 of all the proteins. And then the third step is that there are 4 different types of casein: AS1, AS2, beta-casein, kappa-casein. Let's forget all of them except the beta. Now we do step 4. We're diving down. This is just ridiculous. The betas exist in 3 varieties, A, B, and C. Let's zero in on A. Now we go to the 5th step. A can exist in 3 different sub-varieties, A1, A2, A3, each with 209 amino acids. And then finally, level 6, A1 and A2 are almost identical except for one single amino acid out of 209. And then finally, when you get down into the level 7, supposedly evil peptide at position number 67 is supposed to do all sorts of bad things, and that incorrect claim that that peptide at number 67 is bad for your health is the entire thing. You're switching over from proline to histidine, and the whole empire is built on A2. And the thing is that A2 milk is not measured to be low in A2. It's only certified to come from cows, which at one stage was supposedly genetically low in making A2, but it isn't actually measured. And they charge 5 times as much.
That's right. So
it's a whole con.
Yeah, cow's milk is a cheap, nutritious food source. You know, we've highlighted the point that you need to be offering it to your child. If they're lactose intolerant, you go with lactose-free cow's milk.
Yeah, lactose-free is fine. My son went to Bondi and tried to buy some coffee there with milk, and the barista would not serve him milk because the barista claims that milk causes cancer. Oh, my God. Look, we're running out of time. So number 4 is mealtime feeling fine. You talk about the social importance of mealtime, where the family comes together.
Yeah, look, I highlighted it a couple of times. Mealtime's a real battle when we talk to parents. They're struggling. Kids are shattered at the end of the day, but they're also frustrated because, remember, they're pushing back on these foods. Food fussiness is a big factor at play here.
Yes.
Now, mealtime feeling fine is about regaining control at the end of the day, actually looking forward to this day rather than dreading it, because many parents are. What that means is it's everything from getting your children involved in meal preparation. Now, choose a day of the week where you select some recipes.
And you've got 100 recipes in your book, and I do recommend the energy balls on page 298.
Ah, that's good. Very kind of you to recommend
They're delicious.
Your favourite.
Okay, keep going.
So mealtime is all about involving them in that meal preparation, selecting some recipes so they feel in control, so they feel like they've contributed to the meals for the week, but then importantly, getting them involved in the cooking process. So everything from mixing a few ingredients.
Oh, to being the sous chef.
That's right. And then, if they're old enough, setting the dinner table, but importantly, sitting around the dinner table together. So winding it back a few generations and understanding the importance of the dining table, because research shows that a dinner in front of the TV lasts anywhere between 4 and 7 minutes, whereas a dinner around a dining table as a family lasts anywhere between 15 and 40 minutes, depending obviously on the age of your children.
4 to 7 minutes in front of the TV, but around the table, how long?
15 to 40. But look, the other thing there is the meal choices that we make in front of the TV are more likely to be the fast food.
And you're not paying attention to the food, and you're not savouring it, you're not enjoying it.
We're not tapping into that appetite regulation system that we need to, where we allow signals to be sent from our stomach to our brain, telling us we're full.
Number 5, play every day. What do you mean about that?
This is just about offering opportunities of care to move. Children love to move. They love to move with you, particularly if they're young. If they're older children, it's a time where you can be exercising while you take them to the park. But allow them the time to get outdoors. We evolved to move, but in the modern day environment, we don't move. Incidental activity is not incorporated into our day-to-day life, and it needs to be. You can wire their brain to think that exercise is a must-have rather than a nice-to-have.
And finally, number 6, screen time, rules around devices, etc.
Yeah, this is because sleep health plays an equally important role. We're not just focusing on food and exercise. This is because sleep, or screens in particular, suppress melatonin production in the brain. They're the last thing we use before we go to bed. They're emitting blue light. They're telling your brain it's daytime instead of nighttime. Your kids have a hard time getting asleep, staying asleep. They wake up, the tantrums start early because they're exhausted after a poor night's sleep.
They wake up exhausted after a poor night's sleep.
And what does that mean? That means their ghrelin levels are surging. So when we take blood samples after sleep deprivation...
And ghrelin is a hormone of...
That is produced in the gut, acting on your brain, telling you that you're hungry. You need to go and reach for
and it's
food.
Spelled G-H...
R-E-L-I-N.
And that's a hormone that's produced in your gut telling you you're hungry.
Acting on the hypothalamus, telling you to go and reach for more food. After one night of sleep deprivation, the ghrelin levels in you and your child are surging. You're feeling hungry the minute you wake up. We also know you're more likely to make poorer lifestyle choices. You're more likely to go to the vending machine because it's the easier default option to get that high you're looking for. And you're less likely to engage in activity or exercise because you're tired or lethargic from that poor night's sleep. So this is why Screen Time Showdown is one of the 6 key principles and why it can't be neglected.
Okay, so this is your book, Healthy Parents, Healthy Kids, 6 Steps to Total Family Wellness by Dr. Nick Fuller. And how can people follow you in your fine work? Oh, by the way, this is plus 100 recipes.
Adult weight management, we have the intervalweightloss.com website, but for healthy parents, healthy kids, we also have healthyparentshealthykids.com where you can go and get some recipes and start to learn the fundamentals of food, exercise and sleep so you can regain control in your family household and make sure your kids do not have this lifelong battle with health and weight that many of us are going through.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nick.
Thank you, Dr. Karl.
Shirtloads of Science is washed, spun and aired by the University of Sydney. I'm Dr. Karl, coming to you from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first Australians and traditional custodians of the lands where we live, learn and work.